From mind control experiments to infecting people with cancer cells, we count down 8 of the creepiest government experiments. Number 8. Involuntary gas chambers. During the 1940s, as bioweapon research heightened, government officials began testing their defenses on soldiers. They did this without the consent of the soldiers and tested the effectiveness of the different kinds of bioweapons by using sprayed mustard gas, lung-destroying chemicals, and different chemicals that burned their skin. Once the chemicals made contact with the skin, the test subject would begin itching and experience extreme pain. Government officials also conducted tests to find out if gas masks and protective clothing were actually effective. So they locked soldiers in gas chambers and exposed them to lucite and mustard gas, very similar to what the Nazi Germany gas chambers were like. It's also believed that some patients at veterans' hospitals were used as guinea pigs for medical experiments that involved biowarfare chemicals. Number 7. Mind control. The CIA ran a project called MK Ultra and paid a man named Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron to conduct experiments that involved mind control in a number of different subjects. The goal of this project was to find a method of controlling and influencing the mind and extracting information from the relaxed mind state. Between 1957 to 1964, Dr. Cameron took patients from his hospital, the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal, Canada, and began therapy on them. Cameron was paid to conduct electroconvulsive therapy at 40 times the normal rate. He placed patients into a drug-induced coma for months at a time and would play back tapes of statements and noises over and over again. Over time, the patients forgot about their families and even how to speak. Number 6. Chemical sprays. The CIA, the Army, and the US government conducted a number of biochemical warfare tests in American cities to find out how it would affect people if there were ever a future enemy chemical attack. The CIA released a whopping cough virus onto Tampa Bay, which created an epidemic, and as a result, 12 people died. Another incident was the fault of the Navy. By spraying a bacterial pathogen over San Francisco, many residents in the area developed pneumonia. The worst part was that after these incidents, the Army disguised themselves as health workers, and the entire time they pretended to help the victims, but they were really just there to check the effects that the public was experiencing. Number 5. STD infections. In the 1940s, there was a huge outbreak of syphilis, and the US wanted to find a cure. So they tested the effects of penicillin on Guantanamo residents. In order to do this, the government used prostitutes with syphilis and told them to have sex with soldiers, prisoners, inmates, and the mentally ill patients. Using prostitutes didn't work as well as the US government had hoped, so they hired researchers to pour the syphilis bacteria onto a number of men's faces, forearms, and penises. After the infection had been successfully transmitted, the researchers then gave most of the men treatment, but 1/3 of them were left untreated. Since many of the subjects weren't treated with penicillin, the possibility they still had syphilis and spread it to others is quite possible. Number 4. Atomic bomb testing. Although the US government was trying to harness the power of the atomic bomb, they secretly conducted experiments on humans. It was during the Manhattan Project, where scientists hired by the US government injected plutonium onto 18 non-consenting patients. Some of the victims were patients at a Chicago hospital who were lying helpless, sick in bed, and they were injected with micrograms of plutonium right into their bloodstream. Dr. William Sweet founded the Manhattan Project, and between 1946 to 1947, he and his researchers also injected uranium into 11 patients at Massachusetts Hospital. In exchange for the uranium that the government gave him, he would keep the dead tissue from the bodies of the people he killed for scientific research. Number 3. Paperclip. After World War II, the US government secretly started the program called Operation Paperclip. The program brought over 1,500 Nazi Germans who were technicians, engineers, and scientists into the United States, and they were employed by the US government. Their reasoning behind this was to keep German scientific expertise from the UK and the Soviet Union. The Nazi scientists had all their records destroyed that would ever tie them to their involvement in World War II. The US government detained over 1,800 scientists and technicians, along with all their family members, and after months of interrogation, approved their release. Number 2. Infecting people with cancer cells. Back in 1931, a man named Dr. Cornelius Rhodes was backed by Rockefeller Institute to administrate experiments in Puerto Rico for the US government. His job was to infect Puerto Rican residents with cancerous cells and study the effects, and 13 of them died. What was even more shocking than this unorthodox experiment was the note he wrote regarding the subjects, in which he wrote, "The Puerto Ricans are the dirtiest, laziest, most degenerate and thievish race of men ever to inhabit this sphere. I have done my best to further the process of exterminating by killing off 8 and transplanting cancer cells into several more. All physicians take delight in the abuse and torture of the unfortunate subjects." It gets worse, because after initially infecting and killing innocent people, he also became the vice president of the American Cancer Society. Number 1. Midnight Climax. The US government experiment called Operation Midnight Climax involved a number of safe houses that were in San Francisco and New York. These safe houses were built solely to examine LSD effects on non-consenting residents. The CIA turned these houses into brothels to lure people there. They hired prostitutes to help bring clients back to the safe houses. The prostitutes would bring men back and dose them with LSD and marijuana. The CIA officials involved with the experiment watched the effects from a two-way mirror. The results of the effects of the drugs included rape and murder.